Hello and welcome back to In Defense of a Movie podcast. On today's episode, we are tackling 1993's Coneheads. With me, as always, is Aaron.
Lower your voice tones.
Aaron, I find your co-hosting abilities to be acceptable.
Thank you, Dad. I will approximately have 200 words with you today.
Sitting on Rotten Tomatoes at 37% and a popcorn rating of 38%. This movie came out in 1983, nestled in between Wayne's World 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
A nice brisk hour and 27 minutes, the way every comedy should be.
Yep.
PG rated. Aaron, this is from the director, Steve Barron of 1990's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. In honor of that, no one can see this, but I'm actually wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt right now. So.
Yes, I am as well.
How you doing?
Not too bad. Very excited to chat about this movie with you. Definitely loved it. How are you doing, Dan?
Doing good, but I before we go any further, I got to get something off my chest here because I've been struggling with this. Yeah, I got to get something off my cone.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I could swear to you that there was a Coneheads 2. My parents talked about it. I swear I've seen it. I remember my parents talking about how it's better than the first one.
Oh, Mars Attack.
Well, this is what's freaking me out because Coneheads 2 does not exist.
No.
I got hit with the Mandela effect while researching this movie. And it has had me freaked out for the last week or so because Aaron, I swear I've seen this movie and it doesn't exist.
No, man. You came from another universe or a parallel universe.
I came from a parallel universe where Dan Aykroyd got another shot at this.
I hope, you know what, considering the time and place that we're living in right now with all the alien talk and drone talk, I think it would be time for another Coneheads movie.
I think so. Aaron, you it's no secret to you that I'm pretty interested in this topic. If I didn't have a movie podcast, I'd probably have a UFO podcast.
Yeah.
I'm pretty far down the rabbit hole. And I got to tell you, I wasn't sure how this movie was going to hold up because I haven't seen it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, I really enjoyed this movie. Like, I would go so far as to say I loved this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it checked all the boxes, right?
Yeah.
What you want out of a comedy movie, right? It didn't take itself too serious. It didn't try to push an agenda. Well, that might be up for debate there.
A little bit, yeah.
And overall, it was just like lighthearted and easy to follow and like a good comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very much a product of its time.
Oh, very much.
Yeah, back when SNL movies used to be huge box office hits. It's hard to imagine now, but this is the era of like Blues Brothers, Wayne's World.
Night at the Roxbury, wasn't that one?
Oh, yeah, that was huge, yeah.
Superstar, we got MacGruber.
MacGruber, yeah.
Like, these are just Ladies Man, Black Sheep, and I think the Pat movie, which I don't know. I never heard of.
Oh, yeah, it's Pat, that's right. So after the success of Wayne's World 1, they were looking for the next hit, scouring through the back catalog of skits, seeing what could use a bit more development, you know? Like, okay, we have this great big hit in our hands. What do we do next?
Yeah.
And Lorne Michaels and co., they approached Dan Aykroyd and say, hey, we think we might have something with this Coneheads story. It looks like we could, you know, there's some cool themes there. We can get into like immigration and stuff like that. What do you think? And Dan Aykroyd, being the like UFO nut he is all about it. He jumped right on board, got some writers together. He wanted to direct it, actually, I read, but because he directed this movie called Nothing But Trouble, that
was Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah, we'll probably do it on the podcast one day. It bombed. And so the studio said, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah.
And enlisted the help of Steve Barron, who directed like a ton of music videos. He did music videos from everyone from like ZZ Top, Bryan Adams, David Bowie, Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's quite the list there.
Totally, yeah. But he also directed the 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was obviously a pretty big hit at the time. So
classic.
All the pieces were there. But yeah, to my surprise, this movie was not rated well at all.
No, it's kind of one of those things where it falls victim to the times, right? So we have the Blues Brothers. Was the first SNL movie that came out. Obviously was a success.
Yeah.
Wayne's World, another success. And when you're kind of stacking it up against those ones that were, huge success, everyone's kind of expecting Coneheads to be in that level, but it wasn't. It was its own thing. And I think for what it was, like what they were working with, like, aliens coming from another planet and stuff. Like it's not something that people can easily identify with.
Yeah.
And also, it's kind of weird to say, but like the immigration laws back in 1994, I'm sure it was like kind of a hot topic at the time, but I don't think it was anywhere near as hot of a topic as it is now.
Yeah, exactly. But like in this movie, they treat the immigration agency.
Yeah.
It treats them like mustache twirling villains.
Yeah.
Yeah. They pride themselves on deporting people is really the vibe you get.
Which I think that does exist right now. It was interesting. They're talking about building an electric fence to keep immigrants out. And I was like, why does this sound so familiar?
Right.
Because like, obviously we had Trump talking about building a wall. So maybe Trump got the idea from Coneheads. I wonder. I wouldn't put it past him.
That definitely sounds like the idea of a blunt skull.
Yeah.
Is that what they call them?
Yeah.
Maybe a blunt skull?
There was a British minister. He was actually a Secretary of Air Force, and he was a high-placed British official, and he had some knowledge there. His name was Lord Hill Norton, in fact, and he said that he figured 23 different species of aliens and 23 different types of ships visiting our planet since the beginning of time.
23? Yeah.
So I've seen 4 of them, and I'll give you 4 references right now. You should get the book Contact by Stanton Friedman.
I wanted to tee up this movie by talking a bit about Dan Aykroyd because I find him so fascinating.
He is fascinating.
Dan Aykroyd has done so many interesting projects. He's a really funny guy, but it's no secret that he is really, really into the paranormal.
Yeah.
He did this really interesting documentary in like 2005 called Dan Aykroyd Unplugged on UFOs. I remember watching it way back in the day when I worked at a video store or something. And not only does he claim to have seen multiple UFOs and he's been on, ghost shows and things like that, but he actually claims to have had a run-in with the Men in Black, the real-life, quote-unquote, Men in Black.
Yeah.
Black sunglasses, casing him out, the studio he was at the time.
Looks like Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, exactly. And I also know, based on interviews and stuff, that his participation in Ghostbuster movies is very much because of his passion for the material and trying to, get this stuff into the public lexicon, So going back to 1993 and seeing the absolute conviction that him and Jane Curtin have to these roles, it is mind-blowing to me.
Oh, yeah.
Paramount Pictures proudly presents a motion picture.
These are great seats.
That's heads above the rest. Dan Aykroyd.
It is as if you have seized me at the base of my snorkelies.
Jane Curtin.
Tang, the drink the astronauts took to the moon.
Astronauts to the moon.
Coneheads.
Are they from another planet?
If they're not, we should nuke France right away.
You can tell that he is 100% sold into this material.
Mm-hmm. And committed to the role.
Yeah. I went back and watched some of the old SNL skits featuring the Coneheads. And the punchline is essentially that they have cones for heads, and it never really rises above that. It's kind of like, oh, we're not going to talk about the fact that they have cones on their heads. They're just going to say they're from France, and everyone kind of accepts that in the way they talk and the way they act, and everyone's just trying to be polite around them.
Yeah.
That's kind of as deep as it goes. And this movie, while it does explore some other themes, it really doesn't do much more than that, Mm-hmm. So, Aaron, what was your experience like viewing this in 2025?
I mean, well, first of all, I wasn't really sure what to expect.
Yeah.
As I had mentioned in one of our jury duties, for some reason, I had older sisters. So growing up, they would always rent movies or buy movies. And, I'd have no idea what these movies are. They were older than me and they just put them in and I'd start watching them with them. So This is definitely one of those movies where it wasn't me who rented it because I was only like 4 or 5 years old at the time when this came out, right?
Yeah.
But I do remember watching it as a kid that young. The only things that I could remember about it was obviously their Coneheads and that they had a daughter. Also, the fact that I mixed this with the movie Cocoon in my head. So for some reason, I thought like those two movies were one and the same.
Yeah.
So going into this one, I was kind of like excited because I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid. And while watching it, I was also just reminded of the 90s and the movies that came out in the 90s. And for some reason, I don't know if you find this as well, Dan, but going back and researching these older movies and watching these older movies has been so refreshing.
Totally.
It's just, I don't know how to say it. It like they don't make movies like that anymore. And I feel like a boomer when I say that, right? You know, like back in my day kind of old thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, it was a different time. It's like very, very racist, would very much get canceled like nowadays. But watching it, I couldn't help feel that even though there was some like, you know, little bit iffy things that they would make jokes about and say, it just was in such a lighthearted way that you couldn't help but find it funny. Like, okay, racism is not cool, but if there is like a good way to do racism, I feel like this movie hit on it. I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes
sense. And keep in mind,
yeah.
I am a person of color here, so that's coming from me.
Yeah. I legitimately said to Brie, I was like, I'm curious to know how Aaron feels about this stuff, because it's like, oh my God.
LaGuardia Airport, Delta Terminal.
LaGuardia. Do you wish I take BQE, the Van Wyck, or my suggestion, Woodhaven Boulevard to the Grand Central Parkway? There are more signal lights, but less traffic.
Whatever, as long as we get there.
Woodhaven, Grand Central. 345, drop off, LaGuardia.
Hey, how do you pronounce that?
Eh?
Your last name. How do you pronounce that?
Conehead.
Conehead, huh? I never heard of that before. Where's that from?
France. I come from France.
What are you, a circus family?
Circus, correct. Circus family from France.
I found rewatching this movie just totally delightful.
Okay.
It's like a tour de farce of SNL Who's Who.
Yeah.
And it cooks along. This movie jumps from gag to gag to gag. There's so many visual gags in this movie, Aaron, that I legitimately busted out laughing, you know, every couple minutes, every scene. There was some sort of funny gag, whether it was, you know, Dan Aykroyd's Conehead just popping into frame in a funny way.
Yeah.
Or the fact that they drive with their sunroof down so their heads can pop out.
Just like eating all the weird foods. I thought that was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, there's weird kind of body horror elements. There's some amazing prosthetics that look so good, even to this day on HD. And it was a movie that was just full of surprises.
Yeah.
Watching it in 2025, feeling nostalgic, thinking about the 90s and how comedies were back then. And this movie does things like it literally hard cuts a scene to Adam Sandler, you know, and then he's out of the movie. Then it hard cuts to David Spade, and you're like, he's in this movie. You know, it hard cuts to Phil Hartman or whoever. You know, like even the bit parts are played by now very super famous people like Drew Carey or Ellen DeGeneres. These people just pop into the movie and they're gone. It's this big love letter to 90s comedy and SNL as a troupe of people. I'm not sure whether that's because of Lorne Michaels or Dan Aykroyd or everyone just kind of coming together.
I think it's a combination of all.
Yeah. For a concept as goofy as this movie, the amount of love and energy that went into it is just mind-blowing. I found this legitimately hilarious.
Yes. Yeah. The mass quantities of food, for some reason, every time any of those bits came on, I don't know why. Let me ask you this, Dad, where I was like eerily reminded of The Stupids, where it's just constant gags going. And it kind of gave me that same feeling as that, where it's just like joke after joke after joke and it doesn't stop.
Totally.
And the jokes aren't necessarily like, you know, they're kind of like the low hanging fruit jokes, but maybe in a less, well, some of them were perverted, but a less perverted way. I don't know. I kind of hate it because I guess if you like those low hanging fruit jokes, you're considered like lesser intelligent. But I don't think that's the case at all. I think that this is just such a throwback to the 90s. If I could pick one movie that might encapsulate the 90s, this might be it. Not only because of everything that went on in the movie, but the fact that there was like a music video that came out with it, right?
Yeah.
They had like merchandising that came out with it.
Yes.
And then on top of that, it was just, you're reminded of like the golden age of like SNL or whatever, or like all these golden age SNL cast members. So the way that they approached everything for advertisement, for filming this movie, for picking people in it was just very 90s. And that's the only way that I could describe it.
Yeah, there's comics and toys.
An animated film. I don't know if I said that, but that came out.
Totally. I feel like animated film is like a rite of passage for big 90s movies.
Slow down, Beldar, or we will miss the planet entirely.
Just provide me with the coordinate indices and leave the craft guidance to me.
As I previously indicated, these are the coordinate indices.
That is not what you showed me. Maps.
Maps.
Well, now we must stop and reassess our approach.
This is a super easy movie for us to defend. I just found this so delightful. And one of the things I wanted to defend, Dan Aykroyd and Jane Curtin's performances are so brilliant. Dan Aykroyd has this ability to recite technobabble like nobody else on this planet. The way they wrote his dialogue, where he has all these Conehead analogs to English slang words, and he fires them off in like perfect enunciation in this robotic fashion. I just, like, no one's ever done it better, Aaron. It is unbelievable. And Jane Curtin, her just the big-eyed expressionism and all the funny visual gags, like her just randomly eating insulation like cotton candy while engaged, kind of like the Coneheads do a lot of stress eating, which is a hysterical trait to give these aliens. And I kind of love how gross they are in a weird way, but at the heart of it is this message of showing how strange we might find the customs of another culture.
Yes.
And yet, inherently, you have to respect that. And there's a lot of heart in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
I could just ramble on and on about this, but there's this montage midway through this movie where their daughter, Connie, is born
is growing up
and grows up.
Yeah.
And I assume that her growth cycle is accelerated because no one else in the movie ages while she grows up in like 16 years.
That's I had a question about that. And that theory actually answers my question, so I like that. I didn't even think about that.
I feel like it took her 1 year to age 16 years. So the Coneheads, they put a $6,900 deposit down in a house, the dickheads, and then there's this really touching montage that is totally different from the entire rest of the film.
Yeah.
Where it's shot on like that Super 8 style home movie thing where you get to watch Connie Conehead grow up and you get to see the Coneheads experiencing the American dream. And I thought that was so cool and touching and interesting. And it's shot like a music video. It's got a nice, the song behind it, and that's very much coming from the sensibilities of the director. But Aaron, that scene is like the heart of the movie and frames up virtually all the conflict around it. And I just thought that was so well done.
So I have a couple thoughts on this.
Yeah.
My initial thought on this whole thing is that I weirdly identified with it. So obviously, being from immigrant parents, my dad first moved here to Canada, and then a few years later, my mom moved here, and then they started their life together, and they started having a family here, right? And so, this is us, an Indian family raised in like Edmonton, Alberta, right? Like a predominantly white like area. Now, so not so much, but very much so back in the 90s, right? So like as weird as this is like I oddly like identified with him, and especially their daughter, because growing up, I found that I was always being pulled into two different directions, right? My parents were immigrants that came from India. So, like, of course, the way that they were raising me was the way that their parents raised them and what they knew from growing up in India. But then I would go to school and I would see all these kids and their parents and how they were raised. And then not only that, but just also pulled into Canadian culture. And so I constantly felt like, you know, I kind of came from these two cultures, but I also didn't necessarily belong to either one. That's probably one of the things that I think was extremely well written in this, like surprisingly so, is just this weird immigration thing with like aliens and like the persecution that like immigrants kind of face whenever they're trying to start a new life in a new country. So, and not only that, but like going into the daughter, right, where the daughter is now raised as a human, but then goes back to her planet, right, and is kind of this constant like tug of war between these two cultures that she's getting pulled in, right? Like, does she want to go out and live her life and like be like her friends, or does she want to make her parents happy and like appease them by like going into their alien culture, right? So very, very interesting. Definitely way more deep than I ever thought that this Coneheads comedy movie from 1993 was gonna be.
Yeah, Connie. This movie needed Connie. Connie is like the heart of this, the beating heart of this movie, because there's this tonal shift where it starts as a screwball comedy, and then suddenly you get the American dream experience, and then you get to see through Connie's eyes.
Yeah.
One of the things, like you said, that struck me was Dan Aykroyd spends the whole movie talking about how amazing Remulak is, their home planet. And he's trying to convince Connie that you have to see it. It's incredible. And when they do finally get there in the third act, she doesn't necessarily say anything, but you can tell from the look on her face that, you know, when they first break the clouds and you see how industrial and frankly kind of how ugly Remulak really is, that's that moment where you see that look in her eyes where you think, oh man, she was being sold this idea that her home planet was this beautiful place, but that was actually the values and the ideals of her father. And she's grown up in a different place, so now she actually has a different standard as to what she wants her life to be. And sure enough, she very much is excited to go back to Earth and live out life there with Chris Farley.
Ronnie. Connie and Ronnie.
Yeah.
Even that, so funny. Their names, Connie and Ronnie. Like
Connie and Ronnie. I found out that Connie's short for Constellation, which is pretty rad. It's a Constellation Conehead. Did you know that Ronnie was originally going to be played by Bill Murray?
Yeah.
Because he was in one of the SNL skits. He played like her boyfriend in one of the SNL skits, but he was deemed too old to pass as a teenager.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Chris Farley wasn't.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's got that ageless body, Chris Farley.
Well, Aaron, that was well said, and I really agree and appreciate with what you're saying. My mom was Czech, and she immigrated to Canada.
Yeah.
Well, first immigrated to the States and immigrated to Canada. I essentially was like a first-gen Canadian on my mom's side, and spoke Czech when I was a kid till I was about 3 or 4 and kind of like lost it all.
Yeah.
Obviously, my experience was a little bit different because, you know, I'm Caucasian, but I still had that weird cultural disconnect of every time my mom was on the phone with somebody, she was speaking fluent Czech, and there was this duality in our household of, you know, my dad was extremely blue collar and, you know, was born in like Cranbrook, BC, right? Like, you know, very much a Canadian through and through, coming from like Welsh and Scottish ancestry. My dad wanted to push the Scottish side on us and push the Canadiana side on us, but I always felt more European, and I always felt more like, I don't know, a little more disconnected from Canada for a lot of my life.
Yeah.
And it was always this weird tear of like, what is the home country like? What is it like over there? Do I belong there? Do I belong here? You know? So I really appreciated the messaging in this movie. And I just, like you said, you don't expect it because it's a screwball comedy, and then Connie's born, and then suddenly these layers start coming in. Like, how do relationships work? How do they conduct themselves? You know, they're trying to hide from immigration, but they're also doing an honest day's work, and they're, you know, contributing to society. And
weirdly deep. That's how I'll describe it.
Weirdly deep. Yeah, weirdly deep. And for an hour and 27-minute movie, I just love that about it. This movie cooks from set piece to set piece to set piece. And some of the visual gags, like that one gag where Beldar and Prymatt are they're laying in bed having this deep conversation.
Oh, okay.
And you're right invested in what they're talking about. And it's a pretty good conversation. And then the camera pans out and you realize that they've been standing upright this entire time.
Yeah.
And their bed is nailed to the wall. And so they have one set of side tables and lamps on the wall and then another set of side tables and lamps on the floor in front of the bed. And this movie's just chock full of that stuff where it's got heart, it's got comedy, and then it just hits you with the funniest visual gags. Like there's so much creativity in this movie, Aaron.
Oh yeah, that scene with the bed was especially my favorite because the first time you notice them sleeping standing up, and you're like, oh, and then this scene rolls around, and you're like, oh, they're finally laying down. No, camera zooms out, and they're still standing while sleeping in their bed, but which makes no sense, but okay.
Yeah, the visual gags are what sell this movie. A lot of jokes don't land. A lot of the physical comedy doesn't really land, or it's a little gross at times.
Yeah.
But the visual comedy in this movie is outstanding. It kind of almost felt like a Sam Raimi movie.
Okay, yeah.
Brie mentioned it reminded her of the first Beetlejuice movie, where there's just all these funny background gags in this weird universe that's kind of just a degree left of reality. So I feel like I'm just gushing about this film. I really, really think that people should give this movie another go.
Dan, should we, we've been just going hard talking about it, but we haven't gotten into the plot at all. Should we do that?
Yeah. Why don't you talk about the plot? The cast is insane. I guess we can mention, the core family.
But obviously we got Dan Aykroyd as Beldar Conehead, Jane Curtin as Prymatt Conehead, and Michelle Burke as Connie. So I mean there is a wealth of additional actors that are in it, especially a lot of SNL cast members, right? We had Eddie Griffith, just to name a few, there's Sinbad, Adam Sandler, David Spade, just so many people, too many to list. So, and you know what? They're all, for the most part, minor roles, right?
Donald R.D. Chico?
Yeah, that's you. D-E capital C-I-C-C-O. You were born August 11th, 1951 in Brockton, Massachusetts.
Brockton, Massachusetts?
Oh, it's a lovely town there. And your name is what?
Donald R.D. Chico?
That's right, you are. It's nice to see you. Your wife's name is Mary Margaret Rowney, born June 26, 1955 in Narragansett, Rhode Island. But you're from where?
Brockton, Massachusetts?
Hey, my mother's from there. You two were married June 4th, 1975 in Koros, Greece, where you met on a fellowship following your graduation from Hobart College.
Hobart
College.
College?
Let's put them together.
Hobart College.
The man's a wizard. Everything else you need is in here. Birth certificates, family names, school records, employers, addresses, grandmother's maiden name. Not that they'll ask, but it's in there.
But let's get into the plot of the movie here. So obviously, it's aliens that crash land on Earth. When they crash land on Earth, they immediately go to this motel where Kramer is working. And and ask for certain types of materials in order to prepare their ship. And he tells them it might take you a while to get those parts. And so they decide to assimilate to Earth lifestyle while they wait to make a phone to contact home and also or to repair their ship. So I don't know, the timeline of how much time they actually spend on Earth is up for debate. Obviously, the fact that they don't age, and also Connie grows up to being 16-ish. So I don't necessarily know, like you were saying, if they were actually on Earth for 16 years or she had accelerated growth.
Yeah.
Before they have Connie, Beldar is working in a appliance repair shop where he's working for Sinbad and just making cash. But then he asks for his social insurance number. And obviously he doesn't have one because he's an alien. So Sinbad decides to help him out to get one, which he then goes and takes him to see Adam Sandler, which he gives him a fake identity. And he had already given this fake identity to several other people. So whenever the immigration officers kind of came across this, it got flagged right away because they had so many people already impersonating this person. Yeah. And the head of the immigration office was just an absolute nut and wanted to find this guy. And I think at some point in the movie, they say that he spent over $200,000 on resources in trying to like apprehend the Coneheads. Yeah. So which was like pretty wild, but also it was weird because like he's like pursuing them, and then all of a sudden he gets a promotion and he's like, not my problem anymore. But then because he spent so much money, wherever he gets the promotion, they want him to go back and like figure out like what happened, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of this cat and mouse game that goes on between this immigration officer and the Coneheads, and they're just trying to escape him. At one point, they do find him and they come into their house and they ask where they're from, and they say from France, which, Dan, I don't know if you came across this, but I found it very interesting that the distribution company in France was very unhappy with the fact that they said that they were French.
Oh, I didn't come across that.
Yeah,
that's funny.
which is like hilarious to me because I don't know why. It's just such a dumb movie, right?
Yeah, and that goes back to the SNL skit too. They always said they were from France. It shouldn't be a surprise.
It's such like I feel like it was one of those jokes from the 90s where it's like if anyone was a little bit different and you didn't really understand them, it was kind of just a joke to say that they were like French.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was funny, but obviously I'm not French, so I guess what I think doesn't matter.
We come from France. France. Well, that explains everything.
So the immigrant officer is in their house with him, and then, of course, he starts speaking French, and then Beldar responds and also speaks French to cover his tracks. And as the immigration people are talking, they get a call from their home planet. And, of course, it's like the head honcho master of their alien race. And I believe he is talking about sending a ship to bring them home. When that happens, it kind of kicks off this whole race. The race is that the immigration officers are trying to catch them, and they are trying to escape the planet, you know, to go back home and not to get arrested and thrown in jail or deported.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it goes into this chase. They go after them, and just as they're about to catch him, the alien ship shows up, beams them up, also beams up David Spade and Mick Keaton's character, and takes them back to their home planet. Dan, sorry, do you remember off the top of your head what the planet was called?
Remulak.
Yeah, so he takes it back to Remulak, and then that's where we get the whole scene of, the planet actually not looking so beautiful. The other thing that was pretty funny is, like, he's meeting with, like, the king or the head of their race, and he's bringing him gifts, and the gifts are just, like, whatever he had in his pockets at the time.
Yeah. Whatever was in the trunk of that car.
Yeah. Which I was also like, why didn't he give him the car? That was my biggest question. That was probably the biggest issue I have with this movie, is that he didn't gift him the car. Maybe
a combustion engine was seen as just so
that's a good
insulting
theory
or something. Can we talk about this home planet scene for just briefly? Because
please.
This movie takes a really hard turn. I did not expect to see Remulak when watching this film.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they found time for it even is pretty insane. But according to IMDb, the Remulak set cost $300,000 to build.
Yeah.
And there's this unreal stop motion monster that,
the Rancor.
The Rancor. You wouldn't think that this movie has an arena fight in it, but it does. And this Rancor-style monster looks incredible.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of shots. There's this one shot that shows the eclipse, but there's this other shot right at the beginning of that sequence where it's looking down into the arena where you see the audience just kind of, it's almost like a big silo that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And the eclipse happens right over above. And my goodness, Aaron, those shots look so good, and they're so tonally different from the rest of the movie. But I found that some of the CGI, like the matte paintings, like some of the set extension stuff that went into this film looks so good to me. I was so shocked.
Yeah, it was pretty good. When this scene came on, I couldn't shake how much their mythical creature was just like almost a carbon copy of a Rancor.
Yeah, it really was.
Which, I mean, I'm not mad about it, but I just thought it was very, very entertaining. Hey, maybe that could be a fan theory that it was in a galaxy far, far away. And you know, we can tie in Coneheads with Star Wars.
Rancors originate from Remulak.
Yeah.
You can't prove me wrong. Yeah, I love it. Seeing just the body parts flying while the Rancor disassembles Coneheads off screen.
Yeah.
There was the one guy's like, what was it? Like his leg or arm like flew up onto the steps.
Yeah.
And the prosthetic was a different color than he was. Like a different skin tone entirely. I was like, oh my God, what is that?
Yeah. It was very good. And the cherry
Hilarious.
on top was the fact that he defeats the Rancor by golfing and hitting a it's like David and Goliath instead of a slingshot. Though he fashioned a club, like a golf club, and hit a rock into his face and like, I don't know, I guess killed it. But I just loved it because when they get to the alien planet and you see the look on Connie's face, and then you start to see all the injustice and like just the weird rules that their planet has. What they were doing is they were living on Earth, but they were putting their home planet on a pedestal, right? But then they got to their home planet and they thought, oh, we actually had it pretty good on Earth. And so you can start to see the wheels turning in everyone's head that they're starting to feel this way. So it was just an absolute perfect cherry on top scene where he uses his skills that he learned from like playing a sport on Earth to defeat this like legendary monster that is used in judgment of people, right? And normally wins, and proceeded to destroy like 4 other Coneheads or 3 other Coneheads prior to Dan Aykroyd's character killing him.
So I had a couple thoughts about this scene, which are pretty interesting. The first one is very tidily, like the Chekhov's pistol thing is his love of golf.
Yeah.
And there's this whole subplot in the movie about him wanting to win this trophy and be like the best golfer. And it kind of seems like a throwaway gag, like just, okay, yeah, he likes golfing. But then it pays off in the third act, which is like, you know, chef's kiss, easy peasy, like really tidy writing. And the other thing that jumped out at me is it is so much a product of its time, of 1990. To compare the American dream to another culture by making that culture look savage. That was very like weirdly racist to me in a way towards the actual Coneheads that I don't know if that approach would necessarily be taken today. There's a lot of really subtle visual acting going on, like you said, between like Prymatt and Connie, the way they're reacting and taking all of this in. I don't know if it's like the Conehead culture, but it doesn't seem like they have a lot of agency or even a lot of lines when they get to Remulak. They kind of just take a back seat while Dan Aykroyd's character is put through the ringer. And I don't know necessarily if that's like just the gender roles that these Coneheads have, or I assume it was thought out because so much of this movie seems thoroughly thought out. But Prymatt seems genuinely a little surprised by all of this, and I don't think she should be. I feel like she should have been a lot more on board with everything. Like she seems kind of a fish out of water when they're back on Remulak.
Well, my kind of thoughts were is yes, you're definitely right. But what I've noticed in movies is that when it comes to alien races, it's like all cards are off the table, or however the saying goes. You can't offend an alien if it's like a race that doesn't actually exist, right? So it almost creates like this attitude of you could do whatever you want. Because at the end of the day, this is a fictional race and there's no one here to defend them.
I like how Star Trek it felt at the end there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like how David Spade's very like his lackey just looking for a master to serve kind of thing. It was such a funny like character icing on the cake thing to me.
He also plays that character so well. That little Weasley guy that like
just
a little kiss ass.
That's the perfect word for it. Yeah. Little kiss ass. He's like the Smithers to Mr. Burns.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah.
It's a really interesting tonal shift, but I loved it. And I didn't know, I legitimately had no clue where the movie was going to go once they got back to Remulak. Like, all cards were on the table to me. I was like, okay, what is happening? How is this going to wrap up? And I was very pleasantly surprised.
Beldar, survivor of the wilderness planet. What offerings do you bring me from the conquered worldlet?
Greetings, revered one. Allow me first to present the gift of 2 living native beings from the planet.
You can do what you want to me, but I will not apologize for doing my job. The United States of America can no longer solve the employment problems of the rest of the universe.
Silence the slave!
So the way that this ties up is obviously, he defeats the monster. He is released from all charges. And then he requests that he goes back to Earth to conquer it. Of course, their leader agrees and says he's going to send a fleet with him to conquer Earth. When they're flying to Earth, they tell the fleet that we'll go ahead and scout first and then you guys follow in. And as soon as they enter Earth's atmosphere, they just fake a crash landing, right? And say, oh, they're attacking us, abort, we're going down. And then, they crash land on Earth and the fleet gets spooked and goes back to Remulak, while the Coneheads, they stay on Earth. And now they are Earthlings. And then they also bring back the INS commissioner, Michael McKean. And they strike a deal with him so that he stops chasing them.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how the movie ends in a nutshell right there. One of the things, my initial thoughts were, I do love this movie because number one is, even though there was a lot of, light and just flat out racist things that went on in this movie, they still managed to make the human race look awesome, even though if it was at the expense of the Remulaks.
Yeah.
But like I've always said on this podcast, I'm a huge fan of the human race and the human race exceeding and surpassing their limits. And so it's nice the way that they ended the movie, that they were you know what? We actually have a really good place that even though we are outsiders from another planet, we are still able to come into this planet and make a home, which I also think is oddly very reminiscent of immigrants and immigration and what my parents did, right? They came over, they left India, they came over here and they made a home and this became their place. So it was just the perfect way to end this movie.
And then you have a sweet Dan Aykroyd song in the ending credits.
Yeah, it was
because what's a 90s comedy without a screwball music video to go with it? Oh my God.
Honestly, this is a trend that I think should be brought back, where you just release some weird music video just to get hype going for your movie.
Will Smith understood this for many years, and then somewhere along the way we decided to stop doing that, and I don't get it.
I think what probably is that artists that do these songs are probably wanting to get paid twice, right? For their role in the movie, and then for also making a song, a hit song for the movie. And as capitalism goes, they don't want to lose money kind of thing, and they don't want to pay out any more than they have to. So we get shafted. The product gets shafted.
America has opened her arms to those who dreamed of a better life, in search of opportunity, equality, and freedom. And so it is in this proud tradition that America once again welcomes her newest aliens.
As we slip this censoring back around our cones, there's just two more things I wanted to quickly touch on.
Yeah.
It's not that interesting to me. I love the makeup and everything, but I will note it that something 1,000 cones were made for this movie.
Yeah, I know. How do I get my hands on one?
Each one had to be molded to the actor's head,
and
obviously tone matched to their skin tone. And then Dan Aykroyd went through one every few hours because he was sweating a ton profusely. The cone effect itself is so good, and it holds up under major scrutiny. And the way they ended at the eyebrows, and they have kind of funny eyebrows, and just brilliant makeup. And the fact that they're still able to move around and use facial expressions without wrinkling the thing or showing seams was just remarkable. The other thing, I read this weird thing on IMDb, so take it with a grain of salt, but there was unverified rumor of Dan Aykroyd kind of losing his shit.
Oh, I'm glad
times.
you're talking about this. Okay.
I have a hard time imagining this, but I'm putting it in the context of like, maybe he was a bit coked out or something, or maybe there was just like...
I was reading that also apparently he did something similar on the set of Blues Brothers. It's a pretty wild story if you read it. Like, I guess he caused a female guard to have panic attacks, and he apparently stole a golf cart and was riding around smashing things. So when you say like
hopefully
coked
with
out,
his cone on,
coked out, like it definitely sounds like that. But the reason why he had the freak out is a little bit more wholesome because he was defending cast members for the movies. So he had like wardrobe members, like makeup members and all that. And the studio was not letting them, the guards were not letting them park on site. So they would have to go park on another lot and then walk into the lot. And that wasn't cool with Dan Aykroyd. So, he gave them an earful, which is kind of I think he went a little overboard.
Yeah.
Obviously smashing things, causing a guard to like have a panic attack, but also at the same time, good for him for sticking up for like the people that work for him, right?
Yeah, because early 90s Dan Aykroyd, he would have been considered an A-lister.
Yeah.
Larger than life, SNL fame, successful movie. Blues Brothers was a mega hit, obviously.
Yeah. Ghostbusters.
His directorial movie had flopped hard. No one liked it. So I can imagine him heading into this being a bit, no pun intended, but maybe his head was a little big. You know what I'm saying?
I like that. No pun intended.
His cone was a little big for his britches, maybe. I don't know. But it's I didn't find a source for it, but I did think it was worth mentioning. All this, I'm not saying he actually did cocaine, it's just allegedly. Based on what I'm reading, based on what I know about the SNL cast, I'm thinking that maybe there was some substance abuse that added to a bit of the onset shenanigans.
All the blood was rushing to his cone.
Yeah. Aaron, do you have a WTF moment?
Oh, I have a few. So number one was Chris Farley when they go on that first date with Connie, and they're in the subway, and she eats the subway, and he says, "Wow, I haven't seen someone take a sub like that since my mom." And you're just kind of like, "What?"
Wow! My mom's the only other woman I've ever known who could take a sandwich like that.
I feel like this is supposed to be sexual, but also at the same time, it's not sexual, but like just really weird. I don't know. And I didn't really know how to make sense of it.
Peak Chris Farley.
Yeah. Also peak 90s Subway too. Hey, it's like, what a blast from the past. But then the other one was when they're in the grocery stores and she sees the eggplants.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned this.
And like, just kind of like growls and hisses at them, but then picks one up. So I'm sitting here watching this and I'm thinking, like, do they know about the eggplant emoji before everyone else knew about the eggplant emoji? And is that why she's freaking out? Or is she freaking out because she thinks they're like big like a cone head or something? And it's not clear. There is no context given. And that is the scene. And you're just left to wonder. So I guess it's open for interpretation.
Which is why it's the perfect joke, in my opinion.
Yes.
I imagine some like 70-year-old person on vacation right now in Maui walking down the beach thinking, man, what the hell did that eggplant thing mean in that Coneheads movie? Throwing rocks into the water. What did that mean? It's so funny. And this movie's full of weird things like that. I absolutely love that eggplant scene because I was dying laughing at that. I just couldn't believe that.
Yeah, so funny.
My WTF moment was another. Actually, I feel like Prymatt had the most visual gags. The one that got me, was my WTF moment, is when it cuts to the shot of this vacuum going over the carpet. Okay, you hear the vacuum noise. And the camera slowly pans up the hose, and you're like, oh yeah, she's just vacuuming. And then the camera keeps going, and you realize that the hose goes directly into Prymatt's mouth, and she's just vacuuming the carpet with her mouth and just eating everything. Funny. Man, this movie kind of makes you uncomfortable. Like, there's some disgusting stuff, but it's so funny.
There's just a lot of stuff that makes you scratch your head and you're not quite sure how to feel, but you're like, okay. But I don't know why. I don't know why, and maybe you identify with this as well, Dad. But like, that's the sweet spot for me when the joke is left to interpretation and you're not really sure how to make sense of it. That is my favorite type of humor.
I love irreverent humor. Like it's my favorite. I love like the Tim and Eric style comedy where it's like just batshit crazy, and it's either you get something out of it or you don't. And the thing that's so cool about this movie is it doesn't pull any punches. They throw a lot of paint at the wall, and there's a lot of stuff in here that probably ended up on the cutting room floor. There's probably some stuff in this movie that should have ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
But there's this full steam ahead approach to this movie where it's like, just do the joke, throw it out there, never mind trying to explain it, just go, 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 go. And because of that, there's kind of something for everyone humor-wise, because if you don't like one style of humor, you're going to find something in another style of humor. This movie is just chock full of that kind of stuff.
So good.
And the fact that this is only rated 37 and 38% respectively is kind of crazy to me, because I feel like this should be a cult classic, but I don't think it is. I wouldn't consider it one.
I feel like it's on the cusp of being one,
right?
But maybe
it's
it
just
was
on the tip.
Yeah, it's on the tip, but it's just maybe too early in the 90s. Well, I don't know. I don't know what do we have to do to change people's minds to make this a cult classic? What do we have to do to push it over, to get it over the tip?
Well, the problem is that you need to be visually engaged with this movie 100% of the time.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do laundry or check X or Facebook or whatever, you're not, the fun of this movie is going to sail right over your head. It requires a dedication and a commitment and a bit of patience, if I'm being honest. And you won't get that on like modern comedies these days, because they're designed differently. They're designed for streaming. The jokes have to be explained. Most of the jokes are just pop culture references. They're very much like, they don't want you to have to think too hard about the joke, or they want everything to make sense. And in a movie like this, where you have to throw all of that out the window and just be locked into it for an hour and a half, it's a tough sell. And I think it might even be a bit generationally polarizing in that regard. So I think for it to become a cult classic, there needs to be a new form of media that reminds people of it, whether it's a sequel or a new animated show, or like maybe even like a limited comic run or something to get Beldar and Prymatt and Connie back into the public, lexicon.
What about aliens coming to Earth and being like, where are the Coneheads?
That would do it. That seems like it's about to happen.
Yeah.
You know what would really put it over the top is if Dan Aykroyd guested on SNL, threw the cone back on, and just did a skit with the new cast.
That's a great idea. Get like a Sydney Sweeney to play Connie or something like that.
Yeah, you nailed it, right? That would absolutely launch it into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
They could go there if they really wanted to bring Coneheads, dust it off.
Honestly, I would love a cone for in my pants. And I wear that thing around everywhere. Well,
Aaron, I feel like, I had a lot of notes here. A lot of it makes no sense out of context, but I feel like we've done a pretty good job of cross-sectioning this movie. One thing I wanted to ask you in closing here.
Okay.
Besides how you would recommend this movie to somebody, you had mentioned to me before we started recording that this movie might have something to do with the New Jersey drone.
Oh yeah, that was my joke there. Because it was filmed in New Jersey, and I think some scenes in New York, and then they did some reshoots in LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was saying that, because this whole entire time that there's been these drone sightings, they've been off the coast of New Jersey, and I think a lot of people are like, why New Jersey? All places that these drones are going to show up, why New Jersey, right? And the only thing that makes sense is that this Aliens Conehead movie was filmed in New Jersey's, and the aliens are coming back to look for the Coneheads.
Wouldn't it be funny if the one piece of media broadcast just made its way out into space?
Yeah.
Some higher intelligence out in some star system got a copy of Coneheads.
Yeah.
And interpreted it as historical documentation, and now they've sent their drones to New Jersey to find them.
Hey, who knows? Maybe it's just taken this long for them to actually reach the signal of the Conehead movie, and that's why. Then that's why they're coming here now.
Dan Aykroyd's going to get abducted like Galaxy Quest, and they're going to be like, "Where is your cone?"
Yeah, you blunt skull.
Tough luck there, Beldar. That's a very interesting head you have there. What do I do? Break it open and let all the presents fall out? All right.
Oh yeah, did you catch the scene where the Coneheads don't have a butthole? That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I think that had to be one of my favorite tropes throughout this entire movie was the fact that everybody on Earth looked at them and was like, they are not normal, but they didn't question it. They were just like, okay, they're weird. And that was definitely one of the scenes where actually I'd put that as a WTF moment as well, where he's in the locker room and he has no butt. So, obviously questions of where does he poo from? Does he poo? Yeah. And what does the front look like?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Again, the joke is that it's open for interpretation.
Yeah.
If this movie was done today, I feel like it would fall apart if they tried to explain everything away or get too much in the weeds of why it work. Or if at any point in time someone said, "What's with the cone?" Like, the movie's over. Because you don't address the cone. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah.
The cone is the metaphor, and it's right in your face, and it's so bluntly obvious. So I want to give this film so much praise for that, of just the restraint and letting these jokes just rip and not trying too hard to reel them in.
The whole Chris Farley just like looking at Connie's cone the whole entire time and being like so turned on from it. Holy smokes, that had me laughing.
Hone your cone. He was so into it.
Well, Dan, are you now a cone lover?
Yeah, I absolutely am. I'm still freaked out about there not being a Coneheads 2, but I'll get over it. I think this deserves to be called a cult classic, and I really hope that everyone listening, if you haven't seen it or if you haven't seen it in years, give it another go, because it is just so delightful, so wacky, and so unique. I just loved it.
Greetings. I seek out techno-industrial complex where I might obtain 2 or 3 semnuts of platinum paste.
This time of night, huh?
This is the story of 2 aliens, Beldar and Prymatt.
We are square afterwards. I have pre-radiated leftover starch discs.
Pizza. I will enjoy it.
Do not sear the top of your neck hole.
What I would say to recommend this movie is, number one, please watch this movie because we need to thrust it into cult classic level. Secondly, I'd say watch it so that you could get the nostalgia of the 90s. Because this movie is chock full of 90s nostalgia. And also, Dan, I want to ask you one question. Do you think that we are just, obviously us being 90s kids, do you think that we're just biased towards this movie because of like our fondness for the 90s?
I do. I absolutely do. And I'm okay admitting that. And there's a few movies from the 90s that are like that for me, where I'm like, I can't really show this to anybody, but I really love it. But I'm okay with that because, this is who we are. It's the generation we grew up in, and we gotta hold on to the things that we like in life because things.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of classic comedies coming out these days.
Yeah.
The big ingredient that we have the benefit of enjoying is comedy wrapped in nostalgia. And you don't get that with new comedies, and you can't get that with new comedies until you're kind of looking back. But there's this warm feeling that accompanies a lot of 90s and earlier comedies. Like whenever I watch Dumb and Dumber, I am transported back. I might as well be a kid again because I remember where I was when I first watched it. I remember who was with me. There's this warmth that goes with that you can't replace. And I feel like that's a crucial ingredient to some of the enjoyment of these movies. I don't know how to explain that. It's like listening to your favorite song and remembering when you first heard that song.
Yeah.
Or it's the reason people like going to theme parks because they're enjoying these properties that they grew up with. It's the same kind of vibe.
What is this cubicle object?
Those are some pictures that we took on our trip to Disney World.
Disney World?
Yes. A vast man-made construction which duplicates human psychosexual experiences through tension-releasing fantasy mechanisms.
Yeah, that's me on the pirate ride here.
And just with this movie, like seeing how young everyone was, like young Adam Sandler, everyone's baby-faced and, they're just on the peak of stardom. They're just about to hit the, there's something about that that's so powerful when you're sharing it with somebody, you're laughing together, and you're remembering what it was like when you were kids. You can't put a price on that, really.
Yeah. And it's always great seeing Chris Farley, because as a huge Chris Farley fan, and also very sad about his death, but love seeing him in movies.
I love Chris Farley. Love all his films.
The way he acts and like his motions and his reactions are so exaggerated, but they're just very Chris Farley, and just cracks me up.
Totally. Well, Aaron, I think that's all I have to say about Coneheads.
Yeah.
I hope you find this episode breakdown of the plot of Coneheads acceptable. And we're back. Sorry for the delay there, Aaron.
Yeah.
You're moving. You're doing a bit of a move right now.
I'm moving, and I'm currently also building a house at the same time. So I'm extremely busy, and I apologize to all of you who are waiting for episodes to come out. Bear with us. I am slipping them in whenever I have the time here. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one.
Yeah, we're going to make it work. We're going to get through this. So excited to be back. Happy 2025. And I think that's all I got. Stay safe out there, and stay tuned after the outro music to hear us ramble about the state of UFO disclosure.
Yeah, and if you like it, let us know, and we'll add more UFO content.
Until next time, this has been In Defense of a Movie Podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Bye. Jake Barber stuff is pretty interesting. Hey, did you see there was another interview with one of his teammates?
Yeah, I couldn't sleep last night, and I watched it in bed, and I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, it's so crazy because we've been paying attention to all this stuff, but did you ever think it was going to get to this weird telepathic connection?
No, I never thought that psychic operators was going to be
Yeah, but it kind of makes sense.
The thing that's freaking me out is there's two different camps of people, because people like Tom DeLonge have specifically said that you shouldn't play around with this stuff, that you don't know what you're dealing with, and that the quote-unquote gods are not kind. So, a lot of people in, even the Christian communities are these are demonic. And the idea of people sitting around and trying to, summon these things, well, that's very much a cultic practice. So I'm what if these things are trying to get us to think they're kumbaya, to summon them into our reality so they can... There's something about this that's freaking me out, and it's not sitting right. And I don't know if that's just my Christian upbringing, or if it's just because Jake Barber makes it sound like they're all love and light, and I don't necessarily think that's true.
Yeah.
Something's not sitting right, man.
am very, very, very curious as well. The thing for me though is the telepathic thing kind of makes sense, in the sense that I think that's where humans are going, we're evolving to that point.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, but I don't I do agree with you. I don't know necessarily if it's a good thing that you're connecting to these things. Also, the fact that they're connecting to these things, but there's still nothing concrete, And that's where my skepticism comes in. And they're like, "Oh, come with us and you'll see." And so what does that mean? That you're going to show us moving lights in the sky? Oh, okay, that's cool, but that still doesn't prove anything to me, right?
Yeah, it's a party trick at this point in this process.
Yeah, exactly. It's this is what we're seeing. We don't want to see the lights in the sky. We want to see the proof in front of our faces.
It still gets back to why. The thing that's messing with my head is I read this really wild theory about how not only are we living in a simulation, but that the human consciousness has the ability to collapse waveforms. Essentially, we live in an infinite universe, but the human consciousness, we're all in agreement as to what reality is. So we're essentially collapsing the waveform of possibilities into our daily lives. And so it feels to me like these things are trying to use us in groups where we can collectively, consciously bring them into our reality, because they can't enter it because we're collapsing them out of our possibility of existence, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
And
that's an interesting theory.
Yeah, it's like if you get 50 people together and tell them that aliens and UFOs don't exist, they'll never see them. But if you get 50 people together and like they all agree that UFOs exist, they might start showing up because our consciousness is what's actually collapsing the waveform. And what's the motive here? It's creeping me out. And so I've just been following it closely, but I've actually messaged Ross Coulthard a few times on Twitter and he's responded, and I'm tempted to ask him about this because I'm just like, this isn't sitting right with me. I don't think we should be playing around with this stuff.
Yeah. That's super interesting though, that theory that you just told, because again, that guy, that Thomas Campbell or whatever his name is on that JRE.
Yeah.
That's kind of what his whole spiel was, is he talks about like the universe is actually like an information machine. And and this is where I say it was kind of like what Jose was talking about, where he was saying like we're all one conscious, but have been split up to have individual like experiences.
Yeah.
And he keeps calling us our reality like a virtual reality, like that it's just and like we've trapped our consciousness, basically, is what he's saying, in this virtual reality.
Totally.
And like there is a way. And you know what? The more that I hear about this stuff and the more that it goes on, what I'm thinking is like less that like aliens come from like far away in space somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's more likely that it's like another dimension that crosses over.
I 100% agree. And the thing that's even creepier to me is like, to go along with that theory, there is this idea that perhaps these other alien races, if there is such a thing, are trying to contain humans on this planet because the physical universe exists because we agree it does. But if we start venturing out in space, we could pose an existential threat to life forms that exist in between these worlds. Or like, it's like saying if we suddenly agree that a race of things don't exist, we might be annihilating them without even knowing it, just because we're collapsing waveforms with the power of our consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty bizarre theory, but experiments like the double slit experiment, where light photons behave differently depending on if they're observed, things like that make me think that there's something to this, man. It's creeping me out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you're right on that, but I don't know. I still come back to, but like, okay, so in that podcast with that Thomas Campbell guy, he kept saying that like, it was really weird to me because he kept saying like, he's like, at the end of the day, like your mission is just to be like a good person and help people out and make sure you spread like love and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. But you can't sit here and call the universe an information machine that also cares about like love and caring for other people. Because like information and like emotions don't go hand in hand, you know? And the whole entire time he kept approaching it like it was like a scientific computer that was like inputting information and outputting information, right? And which is like great, but I think that he made it sound that it was like more about the information and it was less of like an entity. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think that it has some sort of like human characteristic, whether it be like emotions or feeling love or feeling excited. Because like you just don't get that like if it's just a computer, right, processing information. So anyways, it was like super interesting stuff. So I'm like very, very curious to see what's going to happen in the next little bit here.
Yeah, me too. Hey, have you been recording this whole time?
Yeah, I have.
Awesome. I might actually just I might post this discussion at the end of this episode, because I think this is probably the most succinct good discussion we've had on this stuff in a while.
Yeah.
But I honestly am very trepidatious about all of this. I just feel like people are messing with forces they don't understand. It's the same way I feel about people using DMT regularly or something like that, where I'm like, that's cool. You got some neat, you come away with amazing feelings and stories and trip reports and everything. But at the end of the day, you're messing with a force and like we know precious little about. And I just think if these ships really wanted to show themselves, they would just show themselves. I don't know why we need to be involved. I don't know, man. It reeks. It reeks, and I'm scared of it, if I'm being honest. I didn't used to be scared of it, but I think that this is as soon as you get into the psi stuff, that's where I'm like, okay, time out.
Hey.
What is the interface here, and why does that exist?
Yeah, but don't worry. We got Jake Barber on the case, and he's a trained military op. He's gonna, if the aliens are gonna be hostile, we got the right guy taking care of us here.
Have you listened
crazy
to
eyes?
Yeah, his crazy eyes. My goodness.
I
hope we get a whistle.
Blink. So
is there
weird.
such thing as a whistleblower that's not a little bit odd?
Yeah, that's
every
that's
whistleblower so far has just been a little bit bizarre. But
yeah.
Have you listened to the telepathy tapes podcast?
Just the first episode. I'm only one episode in, but very, very interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting. And the lady that hosts that podcast, like the doctor that she was working with, she is part of Jake Barber's team now.
Oh, okay.
You know what I feel like? I feel like humans are dangerously close to opening some sort of gateway to another dimension that we don't understand, and frickin' like parademons and are just gonna start flying through. I don't know. I've watched too many movies, man. This doesn't feel right to me.
Opening the gates of hell.
Opening the gates of hell. If this was a good force that wasn't just trying to deceive us simple apes, then it's doing a very poor job of
okay, so
comforting
this is kind of my theory here, and I know we chatted about this a few times before, but I do believe that the universe is conscious. I think that I don't know how the universe became into existence, or what was the criteria that had to happen to for life to begin, whether that be human life or whatever this entity life is. But I do believe that this entity, the universe, quote unquote, is trying to figure out what it is, right? And so when you're trying to figure out what yourself is, you're just going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And so that's why we got this massive universe that's constantly expanding. That's why we got so many different species on this earth, and that's what humans are. Is part of our job is to help the universe figure itself out. And I think it just kind of goes hand in hand with kind of what you were saying earlier, and then also what this Thomas Campbell guy was saying as well. But like I said, I don't think it's an information system by any means, but it's more of an entity. But I don't know. Time will tell.
Time will tell. I'm this close to starting a UFO podcast with you. Just an offshoot of our offshoot of our movie podcast that's just about paranormal stuff.
I would love that. I would also love to just talk to religious figures who have had spiritual encounters and things like that.
Totally.
Just have always been so fascinated.
Well, if this stuff keeps ramping up, because it seems like we're headed for a inflection point. I don't know if disclosure is the right word, but I feel it in my jellies that something's coming here, and it's almost hard to keep up with the news because it seems like every other day there's a new whistleblower coming forward. There's a new video. There's a new controversy. There's a new, it's just we're on a bullet train this year.
A matter of time.
Yeah, you got drones. The drones over in New Jersey and other parts of the world are still unaccounted for. And that's insane. That's been going on since, November? Anyway, so, I don't know, maybe if this keeps going, maybe we'll do a special episode where we discuss our own paranormal experiences and get into some of the...
Yeah. If it's what the people want, we gotta give it to them.
If you like us rambling about UFOs and paranormal stuff, let us know. Because we both love sci-fi, and we both are pretty much up to date and well educated on this stuff. So
yeah, and for the record, I will say this in terms of whether I do believe or I don't believe. I will say I want to believe. But I will not 100% say this stuff exists until I have like irrefutable evidence in front of my eyes. Something like tangible that I can touch and like know that this is real.
Yeah, that's a really good place to be right now. I would encourage everybody to kind of be in that box. There's that, you know, there's that saying to just keep hoeing your own garden, you know?
Oh, I hoe in my garden all the time.
What's that saying? What's that saying? It says, the saying is, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. Basically meaning that don't let this stuff put you in the loony bin. Just keep going, take the information in, mull it over, but wait for evidence, because I feel like humanity's in a really dangerous spot right now. And I can't really explain why. I do have a theory as to like, I do kind of have a working theory of everything, of all this paranormal stuff, but I'll save that for a later episode.
We got to tease them a little. We got to make them wanting more. Don't let them in. Let them know yet.
Wouldn't it be funny if we called this episode "In Defense of Coneheads" and we just didn't even talk about the movie? They just click on it thinking we're going to talk about Dan Aykroyd, and it's just an hour of us talking about.
That's actually a genius idea.